Hello, and welcome to the Listening Post's unboxing channel on YouTube. Today, in addition to the unboxing video of this brand new Pro-Ject X2 turntable, we're going to do a video on how to best set it up. The process is relatively straightforward, but for somebody that may have never done it before or is doing it for the first time, it can be very, very confusing. So we're going to take this opportunity to show you step by step some of the very best ways of getting this up and running. Now, firstly, some advice. Please hang around for some of the photographs that I'll take. They're towards the end of this video, but they're close-ups and they are a good reference to where things might need to go and an opportunity for you to see in great detail how things may be best set up. Okay, so the first thing. When you're setting up a turntable, it's the best advice I can give you is first take off the lid. It just makes access to everything much, much easier and you're less likely to damage something or knock it out of the road. So we'll just put that off to one side. The second is to identify some of the major parts and get them in place before we have to go too far. The first in this model is the separate spindle that sits inside. Now, it's very straightforward to first put it in. You'll actually see that it floats a little bit or bounces. The bearing is so beautifully engineered that it actually captures a little bit of air in there until eventually sitting down, as you will see now. There's the counterweight. Now the counterweight is separately packed in and underneath the packaging. Please, again, check this out on our unboxing of this. And just sort of chuck it in place. Put it in place, make sure that the weight guide is facing towards the front. Then we need to go into the accessories, and I'm going to do this slowly, step by step, so that we identify what is in the bag and you expect it to use. So the first and most obvious is the Pro-Ject interconnects. Now these are these new foil screened twisted pair. They go at the rear of the unit. There's a round belt for the purposes of 78 playback. It has a separate pulley here, again hang around for a photograph. Specific for the round belt that goes round the central wheel and allows the unit to play 75s when you select the 45 speed. We're not going to use that today though. There is a little tool. Now that tool is so that you can change the belt from one to the other without having to touch it. And the belt itself. Now this one is the one we will use today, so I'm going to take it out and put it off to one side. In a little bag there is the anti-skate weight, and with it is a little Allen key. Now that Allen key is to tighten up elements of the arm. The anti-skate weight is extremely important, and it's not uncommon for people to actually lose them. There's a very simple sort of fishing line, very lightweight, and a little counterweight. Put that carefully down. In the same bag and unique to this model, and it's part of the arm, is the pin that is required for the anti-skate weight and its location. So again, tiny little pieces. Hang around for some photographs. We'll show you close-ups. There's an extra weight. Now that goes underneath the cartridge and allows a little bit of extra weight should the counterweight not be able to apply enough tracking force. There is a 45 record adapter, a simple centralized pin, and a little Allen key again for the arm. And unusually there is a second, just in the bag here, a second little weight, just in case you're running a very, very lightweight cartridge, and a pair of polishing gloves. Not quite as important because this isn't a gloss finish, but it's nice that they've included those. There's also a step-by-step packing and unpacking guide and some instructions about how to use the turntable. So, once you've identified the key parts, and again, it's the belt, the platter, the mat, the anti-skate weight, the pin associated with it, and the interconnect, we can start to assemble and set this product up. The first thing is to identify the Pro-Ject logo. Now this isn't essential, but I like when putting on a belt to make sure that the brand actually goes on the outside and upright. It's simple enough to put that first over the inner wheel and then over the pulley wheel, and it always sits on the top smaller cog, allowing it to change the speeds with the speed box that's on board. Rotate that a couple of times to just check that it's working correctly and that the belt isn't going to slip off. It's worth mentioning at this point that the motor is separately suspended and floats brilliantly inside a rubber band. Now that's a key feature, as we've got mechanical separation of moving and potentially vibrating parts from the chassis that it sits in. The second is very straightforward. We take this good heavy perspex platter that's an inch or two, well no, it's 2 or 3 centimetres, nice and heavy, put that in place and then add the felt mat. Now it's not uncommon for one side of the felt mat to be slightly cleaner than the other, but there doesn't seem to be an up or down. Once you've got the platter itself assembled and the belt in place, we're going to work on the arm. Now, as I mentioned, the anti-skate weight now in this model has a couple of pieces. The first is this tiny little bronze screw. Now, the bronze screw has 3 notches on it, specific to hold that little piece of fishing line. Again, hang around for some photographs, I'll show some close-ups, but this goes in the back here, where there is a small threaded section. It's important that you very, very carefully screw that in. In fact, it's easier at this point if you take the counterweight off. You can get right in there, the right angle, and very carefully screw that in. Now it's worth noting that in the resting state here, this little brass screw lines up directly with the arm, and that the hole is countersunk at a particular angle to suit. Apply the counterweight briefly, and we've now got it to a point where we can start setting up the tracking force. The anti-skate weight will be added later. Remove the twist tie. This particular one has a little bit of soft rubber on it as well to ensure that the arm doesn't get scratched. Twist tie should probably be kept, put in a drawer somewhere. Anytime you move the turntable, it's a good idea that that is then twisted back in place. So from there, it's about acknowledging the fact that the tracking force isn't a scientific binary kind of answer. Tracking force can and should be adjusted within small parameters to get the best performance depending on the weight and size of the record, for example. So the setup we are going to do is sort of right in the middle of the parameters that the cartridge has. Right, so the first is we remove the protective stylus cover. It's a little piece of plastic. It's got a little clip, and the removal of it is relatively straightforward. Drag your finger across until you find the clip, and then carefully unclip it. Now the arm is free to be balanced. This particular one has a magnetic holder, so you'll see, and you might even hear that little click. So we need to take it away from that and bring it over to an area where we can then balance it. It's a gap between the platter and the holder so that it can sit and float freely. The first step is to get it to a 0 point of balance. Now a 0 point is relatively straightforward. It's literally like 2 kids on a seesaw or something like that. If you're very careful, you can get them both balanced right in the middle. Sometimes one child has to move a little bit this way or the other one the other just to get it balanced. Well, that's what we're doing. We're moving the counterweight backwards to a point that we can sit this in a neutral position where it's floating at a 0 point. Then we grip the counterweight and adjust the inner ring. Now that moves relatively freely inside so that the ring lines up with a white line on the arm, and that allows you to have a 0 point or balance point now registered. A simple check to ensure that it didn't move, and then we can start applying tracking force by turning the counterweight with now its dial attached and moving it to somewhere between 15 and 20. Now that's right in the middle of the recommendations for this cartridge, which is 1.7, something along those lines. It's about right. And at this point we've added enough force that this is no longer neutrally balanced. It's now dropping gently into place. You can then raise it and check that it's operating as it should with a record in place. I wouldn't recommend doing that with just the felt mat, as you will end up collecting dust, etc., and potentially damaging the stylus. So putting it back in place, we're going to move on to the anti-skate weight. Now the anti-skate weight, as I mentioned, and please hang around for some close-up photographs, has a little loop and a little piece of fishing line to its anti-skate weight itself. This scoops over the back, the little knot, and slides into the middle of the 3 notches, so number 2, so to speak, whichever way you count, and then dangles over the little hook that is provided. So if I spin that round, you'll kind of see, like this. And again, some close-up photographs will be the best way of seeing that. Now looking at the rear of the unit, the rest is really straightforward. We've got 15 volt power supply supplied with the unit, which plugs in here, and the interconnects which go there. It's worth noting, just from a little bit of practical experience, attach the earth strap first, because if the plugs go in first, it's very difficult with little fingers to be able to get access to it to tighten it up. This doesn't need to be super tight. I generally don't use a screwdriver to do it, but it's a process of just putting it underneath the screw, tightening up with your fingers, and then connecting the left and right cables to the output of the turntable. Okay, so there we have it. This beautiful brand new model Pro-Ject X2 turntable in walnut with a 2M bronze cartridge set up here at the listening post in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe to our channel.